Okay. Now you should see the Maya mechanics on screen.
Yes.
And first things first, this is your chart, right?
Yes.
Okay. Uranus opposition happened, the exact date was 3rd of May 2020. So at the beginning of the pandemic. How was that for you?
Actually, it wasn't bad.
It usually starts like 2-3 years before the date and lasts 2-3 years after the date because it's a 7-year cycle. Each of these big transitions, Saturn return, Uranus opposition, Chiron return, are kind of 7-year cycle because they're a full biological cycle for us. We completely change from one person we were before it and to the different person we're going to be after it. And Uranus opposition, it's usually also called the midlife crisis. And people in Uranus opposition usually start questioning, what am I doing with my life? Change careers, change jobs. Is this worth it? This is the kind of theme overall in Uranus opposition. And also, it usually plays out lessons from the Saturn return, from the 30 years, from the first big phase that we didn't learn back then. So whatever we didn't learn, lessons of life, they come to bite us again in the Uranus opposition. This is how it usually comes up. Now, I usually suggest people for the first two transits, probably you read on my page, for the Saturn return and for the Uranus opposition, to come to the reading only after the 7-year transition, because during the transition, it won't be useful. They won't be able to see what's happening. And before the transition, it can actually minimize the impact. And for these two life events, you actually need the full impact. You need life to hit you hard so that you learn. If I give them the reading beforehand and I prevent that impact, I am preventing important lessons in the person's life. After the event, so right now, for you, the Uranus opposition 3 years later, I can tell you what happened back then, what were your biggest lessons, what were your biggest struggles, and see if you encountered them or if you learned them.
Okay.
And so there's only one, just looking to make sure I'm correct. Which one is the, wait, because I'm not looking at the whole thing. All right, this is the Uranus opposition. This is your chart, and this is the Uranus opposition. If you notice, the Uranus opposition, even though is a moment in time, it has a complete chart. It has a personality and design, just like your chart, and is creating sort of a relationship between you and the cycle that happened. That's because we take the cycle as a whole. We don't take it separately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as I'm seeing it, you have only one educational channel. So just one big lesson that you had during this life cycle. And that is pretty much to question reality. It's the channel 6124, the channel right here. It's a complete dominance in the Uranus opposition. You don't have it, and the Uranus opposition brings it to you. And this means that you were forced to face that things aren't the way you thought they were, to question reality. The 6124 deals with things that cannot be known. This is where God comes from. somebody with a 6124 wonders who created the world, and here we are 22,000 years later still looking for it, because a 6124 questioned the fabric of reality, questioned the creation of reality. That's what the 6124 does. They question reality. And this is what this cycle brought to me. Questioning reality as you know it. It might brought some unknown, it might bring some spirituality, it might bring some, I don't know, conspiracy theories, but it's basically going into things that cannot be proven. You naturally have in your chart the 6447, the 47, actually, not the 40, no, the 47. Now, that deals with things from the past. You are used to think about history. You are used to think about these things. The 47 is a gate that pretty much comes from the Ashna, so it's anxiety. All hanging gates coming from awareness centers are sources of anxiety, but it pretty much fears history repeating itself. It's I'd like to tell people that the 47 is the who invented the phrase people who don't know their history are bound to repeat it. The
Mhm.
47 will study what happened in their life, in their family's life, in history in general, to make sure they don't repeat the same mistakes. So
Mhm.
you are usually an overthinker, but what the Uranus opposition brought in was a different kind of overthinking.
Oh, yes.
Uh, Now, also another thing that happened, and I have to see where it is, it's in the notes. You have a personal direction change into self love.
Mhm.
Uh, but it could have happened something of having no control over something. Well, we were in the pandemic, so yeah, you had no control. But it could be something of that sort, because gate 10 is the gate of behavior, but it's also the gate of self love.
Mhm.
So usually people who have it consistently in their system, so for you it's a transit, but for people who have it consistently in their system, I just tell them you don't have to learn to love yourself. Just let go of control and you'll fall into self love. Now, for you, how it could have happened was a loss of control during this phase, something happening in the world or towards you that made you lose control over something, made you need to fall into self love, look towards self love, and rediscover yourself in different ways. It connects to your 57, so it might have heightened your natural intuition.
Yes.
The issue with the 57 that you have naturally in your gate, the 57 is the gate of one of the gates of intuition, is the gate of intuition, but it's a gate of power. I usually tell people that have the 57 that you have many intuitive gifts, not one. You have many intuitive gifts. But because they have so many and because they're bodily, they're not mind, they're the body knows it, they doubt it. They don't act on their intuition. They doubt it a lot because they cannot believe if it doesn't make logical sense, if it's not the mind telling them that their body actually knows that things. But they are very, all 57 people have very strong intuitive traits. And the gate 10 in this transit connecting to your 57 heightened all of that intuition, all of those feelings in you. Everything felt like you have a sense. You can sense something is different, especially with the 6124 as well. That makes you question the fabric of reality. So it all ties up and it gave you a feeling of sort of unrest. Now, also another, I have to look where it is. It's gate 38 in the transit. It's in Uranus and it's in a sixth line. This is a personal connection, but it's an educational connection. So it's not somebody who stayed in your life. It's more like a lesson you received. You might heard about someone, you can even read of the news of someone and not know that they have gate 38. But something happened that delivered a lesson about struggle. You have the gate of struggle, the gate 28, and the gate 38 is the gate of the fighter who fights for their rights. These are the people who stand against global warming. These are the activists of the world that would stand by you in the fight for whatever. And somebody activated that struggle, made you want to go out and fight for what you believe in, which again, it all ties out because your fabric of reality changes, your intuition heightens, and suddenly you have somebody from outside your circle coming in to empower you to follow those convictions, to follow what you believe in. And the only other connections would be a bit more uncomfortable because they are compromises. No, 35, 36. Yeah, only this one is a compromise. The compromise is on the gate of crisis, which means that you had some bit of a crisis in the whole situation. And the part that it was compromised is your ability to share about it. It's the 35 towards the neck, towards the throat. It's compromised by the transit. And that means that you had a hard time talking about it. You went through something. Let me see if it's personal or developmental. 36, where's the 35? Okay, in the moon. It's all very close. So these are people. You had people in your life. It can be family, it can be friends, it can be somebody close to you. It's people in your life that had, maybe not even you had a crisis, maybe they had a crisis, because if the crisis is in the transit, it's not you. They had a crisis and you couldn't talk about it. Your ability to talk about this is compromised. Okay, there's another personal connection here. You have gate 9, the gate of detail, and gate 52, the gate of stillness. It's in your north node. This is again direction, which means that for the first, I would say up to 2020, to the end of 2020, so from 2018 up to the end of 2020, you felt quiet. Is the gate of stillness. You had a different kind of focus. The gate of detail always makes you have the gate 9 consistently in your profile, and that kind of makes you a bit of hyper focus. When you focus on something, you really focus on it, pretty much getting the horse glasses on and seeing only that focus in your face. Now, gate 9 gives the stillness of the process, allows you to grow through that focus, stabilizes that focus, gives it a wider picture. Gate 52 is very grounding for gate 9. It feels less chaotic, the hyper focus. So you might have, because it's in your north node, you might have experienced that for the first 3 years of this transit up to the end of 2020, and it might felt like you were really productive in that period.
Yeah, I started a company in 2018, and I also got married in 2018.
Now, these are the major things. There's the other ones are just environmental gates that would be things that you notice in your environment, but you can or can not interact with them. These are not necessarily to be interacted with. And I would rather prefer, I'm going to ask you now, but I would rather prefer to move into the Chiron return than go to these gates. So I give you some time for questions at the end as well.
Okay.
All right, so the Chiron return, this is gonna happen in 2025. So you're just starting now at the end of this year, this cycle. It has one educational channel and two personal connections. Let me see where they are. 8-1 and 51-25, both individual. 8-1. Oh, yes. 8. Okay, so it's a developmental brightness and 25 direction. Okay. Okay. Now, this is interesting. It also has only one big lesson. This time is the channel 1762, which makes your all the slingshot channels activated for you in your Chiron return. I call them slingshot channels because these are channels that speak faster than we can control our tongue. It's things that we say it and kind of slip out. It's things that, yeah, they're faster than we can think about them. And you'll speak your mind. That's for sure. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 channels activated in your Chiron return all through your throat. It's a major time of manifestation for you, that this transit. The throat is the manifesting center. Everything comes through the throat, all the channels, everything tries to get to the throat. So your biggest lesson, the 1762, is the channel of the design of an organizational being, but it's a channel that's on the logical collective circuitry. What does it mean? It means that it's focused on delivering logical information. I make fun of this channel usually and describe it. Do you know when you buy a phone or a computer and they have all those specifications written down that some people never understand? That's a 1762 writing them. And 1762s read them and understand them. The rest of us pretty much look for one feature that we care about, and if we find it there, we buy the phone. If we don't find it there, that's it. But the 1762 get into very logical, very minute details about what they're passionate about. They know everything about what they're passionate, and they tend to overshare because collective channels is what they do, they share. So this is something that will come up for you. You might have to over explain what you do, especially since you started a company. You might bring in new products and find new way to promote them, or in some way learning things logically and passing them on to someone is going to play out an important role. Or you might actually have it the other way around, somebody explaining to you something logical, taking a course, doing something different. You might learn it through someone. You either learn it through experiencing, having to do it yourself, or you learn it by witnessing it in other people. Either way, it's going to be the major thing that's going to play out in the Chiron return. As for personal connections, is the channel of inspiration where you have the inspiration. You have gate one, which is the creative masculine. You have both the creative masculine gate one and the receptive feminine. So you have the duality within you, and you might naturally move from feminine qualities to masculine qualities, from creative and out there, outspoken, like a masculine person, to a very receptive and very open feminine nature. This is because you have both ends of the direction, because it's in the G center, both ends of this direction within you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, eighth, the eighth, especially since it's in Neptune, since it's developmental, it's gonna help you bring your creativity, your masculine side, to manifestation. It's moving towards the throat. So it's gonna make you, help you. It can be people showing up and helping you. This can be you learning a new skill, but it's going to bring your creativity into manifestation. It's going to push you in some way during this cycle to bring out the creativity. And you might be pushed more into your masculine side because that channel gets manifested. Um,
Yeah, I
and
feel
the,
like I'm waiting for that to come back.
you felt like you were very much into receptive.
Yeah.
Let me just look really fast on at this, the 2023. Yes, definitely. So on your solar return, the gate of the receptive is amplified. So this year, your gate of receptive is amplified. So you're feeling more feminine, and yes, well, you feel like you're waiting for that to come. Yeah, it's coming in the Chiron return. It's gonna be a quite big event in the Chiron return. And the other thing is gonna be a direction change into a very personal, very willpower kind of direction. This is the channel of initiation. It's the only individual channel in the ego. Everything, all the other gates of the ego are tribal. This is the only one that's individual. And this is the channel that says, I am the best, because it is in the ego, it is in the center of willpower, and it is individual. So it's about you. Now, this is gonna, might, considering that you also have a very masculine energy in this transit, it might push you in feeling like you're competing with someone, or you're competing with other versions of yourself, but it's gonna feel like a competition. Interestingly enough, I have to look even at the solar return. No. Interestingly enough, you have the same compromise, like in the Uranus opposition. You have the 35-36. Again, it's people. Again, it can be close family. Again, it's very close to home. It's people going to crisis that you can't verbalize. It's compromised on the channel towards the throat. So it's probably it can be somebody sharing secrets with you about their crisis that you can't talk about, or knowing about some crisis that if you share about it might make it worse. But it's the same transit like you had in the Uranus opposition. And now the channel of struggle, the one that in the Uranus opposition was uplifting you, pushing you forward. Now it feels like it's compromising you. So it feels like your efforts are compromised. It feels like it's hard to fight for what you want. It feels like something is getting in the way, and I'm gonna look to see if what's getting in the way it's a person or it's developmental general something happening. 38. It's a person. It's in the moon, it's close by, it's attraction field. So it's definitely a person in your life. 28. Where's 28? It's also in the earth, so very, very close by. It's gonna feel very close and it's gonna feel like it's happening to you. It's gonna feel like taking it very personally. But your efforts would feel like compromise. You might feel like I've been trying so hard and you don't appreciate it, or things like that.
Yeah.
Now, these are the major things. You can ask questions as you please. Let me know what questions you have, what should I talk more about.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. Just kind of all of it kind of makes sense though. Like in 2018, I got married, started a company, um, My husband and me did the company together after a few months. And then this past year has been the struggle with getting out of my masculine and allowing him to be in his masculine, me stepping back into my feminine. And it's been really hard for me because I'm really good at being a leader. Like I'm really good at being the masculine. I'm very good at that role. And then stepping out of it has just made me feel like I don't know where I belong. I don't know. It's just been kind of hard for me. So I've been going back into this role of what typical feminine role looks like: cleaning the house, designing the house, decorating the house, focusing on home life more than business life, but still managing the books and the money and the bills and stuff like that, but just very kind of like I've lost all organization in it. I've just kind of lost this. If I can't put 100%, I don't know how to do 10% kind of thing. So I've just really stepped back and like giving him a lead role, but then feeling like, okay, should I go be somewhere else? Should I start something new? And me trying to get my feet back in the door to like get back in it, but then not wanting my husband to feel like I'm taking over or him losing his masculine place if I am the one to do that. Because I'm very good at solving problems and fixing. Somebody brings me something, I can fix it, you know? And so then that was going on. The marriage, the business, I mean, it took off. And then I stepped back, and this whole year has felt like I've lost myself almost. Like, but then I also have my parents living with me, and I have a lot of, mother wounds. And recently there's been so many triggers in trying to manage my mother's, because I wasn't raised with my mother, but I have bits and pieces of life with her, and it's always been negative. It's always been a hard lesson. And then she came to live with me, and she lives on my property, so not in my same house. And it's just been a real struggle. And lately I've just stopped communicating because I feel, I don't know, I feel drained by it very easily. And I do feel taken advantage of. And I do feel like I'm just in this stuck place of not knowing what to do, because I'm one of those people where if somebody changes who I am, like my energy, my joy, like my natural reaction is to just get them out of my life, to push it away. And I went through this learning lesson of that can be a toxic trait, that people aren't perfect, that you have to try to work through, you have to work through things, you got to forgive people. And that's how I ended up staying in my marriage for the last 5 years, is because of me practicing that role on my husband. So now when it comes to my mother, I'm in conflict with, I feel like it's time to separate ourselves. Like, even if it's just not living here on my property anymore, like, but asking her to, it just feels like a lot to unpack. And it's very emotional for me. And it's so draining because I'm one of those people that, like, I have to have it all figured out to implement it, kind of thing. Like, I like to think before I speak more times than not.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to show you this contradiction. This is normally you. And
Yeah.
regardless of the transit, so our chart doesn't change with the transit. That's why our transit looks like a relationship chart. It doesn't look like our chart changed. It looks like a partnership chart. Like I would make a partnership between you and your husband and between you and your mother. But in all the transits, this is your solar return for this year. So the sun return, your transit for this year only. This is your Chiron return, and this is your Uranus opposition. All of them are one more emotional than the other. I mean, the solar return this year is the most emotional because you have two channels defined in the transit, and in the other ones, you have only one in each, and hanging gates plenty. But this year is the most emotional by far, and it's collective emotional, collective waves, and collective waves doesn't have to change anything. Nothing has to change in your situation for you to go from high to low, back to high, back to low. It feels like waves, and nothing needs to change in the environment. It just changes your whole emotional state. You might be very good at some point, and the next day it's the same. Your mother still lives in the same place. Everything is the same place. One day you are perfectly fine with it, and the next day you can't stand it anymore. And then you're again kind of fine with it, and then you absolutely can't stand it. It's a cycle that moves like waves of the ocean, and you're gonna feel it very intensively this year in 2023. Besides all the retrogrades that are in here. But this is one thing that I wanted to show you because regardless of how emotional the transit is, you are a sacral person. And yes, you are right. You have the 15-5, which is the channel of rhythm. You have your own routines. So living with someone else, going around tippy-toeing about somebody else's routine is not going to make you in any way comfortable. You need to maintain your routines in order for you to feel empowered, to feel yourself. You are a leader. You have the 31-7. I usually describe this channel, when birds fly away and they make that triangle with one bird at the front. Yeah, that's the 31-7. They are a leader that decides in which direction we go. They cannot follow the direction of somebody else. It feels uncomfortable.
And it doesn't feel right.
And also it's both of these are logical channels, and you will have even more logical channels in the Chiron return that's showing up. So for you, it doesn't make logical sense to follow someone else's rhythm or to let anyone else take the lead. Also, naturally, you assume responsibility. naturally. This is the channel of responsibility. It's called the channel of custodianship. So it's the channel that takes care of children and normally in the tribal environment, it's a tribal channel. But it's the channel that's able to assume responsibility for the safety of the tribe. When you are denied responsibility, you feel useless. That's the thing. This channel needs to feel responsible in order to feel like they are being cared for. Yes, giving more responsibility to people with 5027 shows them that you care for them, even though the main story is that you have to help somebody by removing responsibilities for them to show them you care. The 5027 reacts completely differently. If you remove responsibility for them, it feels like you don't care, you don't value them, you don't value their input, you don't value their contribution to the tribe, to the situation, to the family. So the more responsibilities 5027 have, the better they do. And this is you, naturally you. So of course, that stepping a role back, even though it's something that would happen naturally this year because of the it's a double activation on gate 2, on the gate of the feminine, on the gate of the receptive. It's a double activation. So it's an amplification of the feminine traits. Even though you are in a very feminine position right now, you still are you. You still want your own rhythm. You still want to take the lead. You still want responsibility. From a more feminine position, sure, but you still need those qualities that make you you. Our chart doesn't change because there's something different in transit. So that's the conflict you're feeling. And I think that the whole situation with your mom is the 35, 36 that you can't really vocalize it. You can't talk with her about. It's a crisis that's happening internally and externally that you can't really discuss it. And for that, uh, the transit has dominance. And the lesson of the 35, 36 is quite beautiful, actually. Every development in human history happened because of the 35, 36, because they go through crisis optimistically.
Yeah.
To describe this channel, I usually use metaphor. So the 35, 36 is on one side of the river, and they convince and tell everyone how beautiful it is on the other side of the river, but they have no idea how to get there. And while crossing the river on a wooden plank, on something completely improvised, sharks come, wind comes, they destroy their plank, they have to start swimming, they lose a leg, they have to keep swimming. All the crises possible that can happen to them usually, and they keep ending up on the other side joyfully despite all the crises. That's the lesson that the 35, 36 brings. And this is something that you are being brought into, both in the Uranus opposition and in the Chiron return, to accept life challenges joyfully.
And that's typically like the other side is always like that for me. Like I tend to be a very optimistic person, but I'm very emotional too. So, but
You
I
are
pretty quickly. But just
you are not emotional. So this is your chart. You have a completely open emotional solar plexus. You are an empath.
yes.
You are not emotional yourself. You are an empath. You pick up on everybody's emotions. You can feel their emotions even if they suppress them. I don't have it completely open. I just have an undefined solar plexus. And when I found out that, it changed my complete worldview completely. Because I realized that what I'm feeling, one, is not me. it's somebody else. And second, I was able to have compassion for them because I realized I feel it even though they suppress it.
Yeah.
I I can enter in the room where my mom is. My mom is emotional and she has a tribal emotional channel which suppresses emotions by nature. That's how she is. That's how that channel is. And I enter the room and I feel the emotional charge. I get emotional. But now, understanding that it's not me, understanding that it's her, I go and say, "Are you okay?" Of course, what? She's so used to suppressing that she won't recognize that there's something in her charged. And now I can push her to release, to cry next to me, to show emotions next to me. It took a lifetime to do that. I was usually the one blowing up because I would amplify her. I would be
Hmm.
the one blowing up and she would keep suppressing. And she would
Hmm.
make me feel bad for it. She would make me feel guilty for it because, oh, you always cry. Why do you always have to cry? Why do you always have to go emotional? Why do you always have to be like that? And I actually thought I have a problem with controlling my emotions. I went to Emotions Anonymous for it because I thought I'm over emotional, just like you describe yourself as emotional. And I realized no, I'm very strongly attuned with everybody else's emotions. And I can feel them even if they don't admit that they have them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's yeah. I have a hard time living with people because of that.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm telling people with an emotional open center that my ability to read the room is the reason I don't go in the room. When it's emotionally charged, we feel it and we tend to want to avoid it. That's the not self theme of the open emotional center, to avoid conflict and truth. And so we step into an emotionally charged situation and go, no, no.
Well, and if I'm solving problems, then I'm okay with it. Like if people come to me, or even if I like go to be really direct and address things right away and solve the problem, then I'm free of all of it. But then when the problems or the emotions and stuff isn't being resolved, then I feel like it's physically making me sick.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
just feel like not myself, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me, and I know that it's emotional related. I know that it's my environment. I know that it's the people that are around me, and I don't know how to solve it right now. I feel really out of my element for some reason.
The best way to manage emotion, any kind of open center, any kind of not self teams, you have four, one, two, three, four open centers. So any kind of open center that you feel is going into the not self team. So the solar plexus starts amplifying somebody else's emotions. The head center starts putting pressure on you to solve somebody else's problems, or
Yeah.
so on and so forth. The best way is taking 15 minutes away alone in your own aura per center. So for you, I think it's 1 hour, but it doesn't have to be all at the same time. You might feel it sometimes your emotions charge and you take 15 minutes to clear out those emotions. That's not you. You don't need that. And just 15 minutes, usually it's enough to connect with your sacral and get back into yourself and then deal with it again.
Yeah.
For me, allowing this help me deal with people, help me deal with them, not feel like, yeah, I have to change their emotions, because that's the feeling we have. Because we feel the
Yeah.
emotions and we're uncomfortable with it, we have the feeling that we have to solve the situation and change the emotional space. It's our responsibility.
Yeah. I don't want that responsibility.
It's not yours. It just feels wrong, but it's not yours.
Yeah.
I have a question because I'm noticing the 4323 channel in your chart and it's completely unconscious. And it's in your nodes. Wow. How do you know about it and do you feel it manifesting? If you don't know about it, I'm going to explain it, but should I explain it first?
Yes.
All right. So the 4323, I'm curious about it because it was my last year's biggest lesson, and all the customers I had last year had this channel, weirdly enough. The 4323 is the channel that is called Genius to Freak. It's a slingshot channel, like I told you, is a channel that speaks faster than they think. It's a very individualistic channel, and usually it comes out either as a genius or as a freak. People see people with this channel as complete geniuses. You're amazing, you're the best thing that ever happened, or a complete freak and judge them. And usually people who have it in black, as in personality, as in conscience, tend to hide it, tend to not speak out, tend to suppress the energy of it and be polite so they won't be considered a freak. But you have it completely unconscious. So that means you have no control over it. So it means it comes out spontaneously out of you. Yes. And I'm curious how it plays out in real life.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't plan it. It just shows up. And then I'm like, oh, that's good. And I'm always saying, I didn't plan to say this. I didn't plan to do this, but it's good. So just go with it.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of people who come to me and yeah.
It's also in the fourth line, so it's gonna be people, who come to you. It's gonna be with people who are in your network. So it plays out possibly good, even because you're open up, you're opening it to people who are in your network already, and you're not bothered to be seen by either or freak or genius. If you see me as a freak, fine. If you don't.
Yeah.
I saw most people with conscience, 4323, and seeing this channel suppressed, it's very bothersome because they are people who are actually have brilliant ideas. Yes, it's a genius channel, have brilliant ideas, but they keep them suppressed because somebody might think something badly of them because they've been seen as a freak before.
Yeah, I don't have that in my life. Thank God. But yeah, no. Yeah, I thank my dad for that.
All right. So if you have any other questions, let me know. You can also contact me on Facebook if any questions come up. As soon as this finishes loading, I'm gonna send it to you so you can rewatch it and maybe other questions come up and you can feel free to ask me in Messenger.
Okay. You said that there's a direction change.
Yes. In the Chiron return, yes, the direction change is that you will feel in competition with someone. You will feel like you have to be on top. The 25, sorry, it's coming in direction. Usually your direction is the creative. Normally your direction, actually no, even your direction changed. because at Uranus opposition, so in 2020, we changed from the direction from the north node to the south node. So you change from a very masculine perspective, a very creative perspective, to a very feminine perspective. But now it's changing again. Not forever, so not for a long time, not for all your life, but for the couple of years when you're in your Chiron return, it's going to change to the 25th, which is trying to be the best. It's trying to be in competition. It's trying to use its willpower to get on top, to get further. And it's connected to the ego, so it's willpower based.
Is that good
As
or
a
bad?
As a suggestion, no, there's nothing is good or bad. It can be either or. But as a suggestion, connect to the heart center. So don't see ego as a place of pride and how many new age people see the ego as something that has to be killed off. See the ego as a heart center and connect to it from that space. I can send you later on some contemplations for the 25, how it can be seen both as negative and positive, because you want to lean into that direction that's being brought to you in the Chiron return, but you want to do it from a heart space, not from an egocentric space.
Yeah. Which I think that I am naturally like that.
That's great. That's great.
Okay, well, so when does this change? Not till the end of the year? Not till after 2023?
So let me see. The Chiron return. The node changes, yes, towards the end of the year, since it's in April 2025. Yeah, it changed. It changes around now because it's about 3 years before. So 3 years before, it's actually last year, 2022. 2022 lasting till around 2025.
Okay.
So it's changed already. You are already in between the 20s, this transit, this direction of feeling like you are in a competition with someone. And the masculine side, is it now or is it after 2025? Let me just see. No, it's after. So you're going to step into manifesting your masculine abilities after 2025. So the second half of the Chiron return.
Okay.
How you look, just so you know, in case you stumble upon any solar returns or anything, what happens in the first half, it's on the red, and what happens in the second half, it's on the black.
Oh, okay.
And with the solar return, it's the first half of the year and the second half of the year. This is the first half of 2023 from your birthday in 2022. No, from your birthday in 2023, because you're born in January. From your birthday in 2023 to your birthday 2024. First half of the year, second half of the year.
Okay. Yeah, another thing that I went through in the last 5 years is my spirituality. Like, it's changed drastically. Like, from where I came from to where, like, meeting my husband was to grow my spirituality. That was the whole point of picking my husband, was for my spirituality. And then I've kind of like this past year, a good solid year now, I've just done this massive transition in spirituality that I'm really proud of too.
Yeah.
More less religion, more spirituality. Finding my own way in it.
6124. Yeah, it's still playing out. It's still playing out in your solar return. Yeah.
Definitely.
6124 brings exactly that. And religion, from my point of view, religion and spirituality don't contradict each other. We just have to start looking at religion through archetypes, and then we'll understand that they all speak about the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Religion is not a story that actually happened. It's not something that you need to believe in. It's an archetype, it's a story, and it all says the same thing. Even astrology, Christianity, Buddhism, everybody says the same thing if you look at it in terms of archetypes.
Yeah.
And I also usually tell people that why human design works, it's because it's using mostly archetypes. All the gates are archetypes that are in everything, really. It's basically the I Ching, yes, but from the I Ching, all the archetypes that are here, each of them is playing a role in different ways, in different religions, in different ways of presenting spirituality. It's just using an archetype as ourselves. Which archetypes are you, basically?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I want to tell you is that I have a private community, and I'm meeting people in my private community like this in a session uh, weekly, at least once a week. And also, I'm doing workshops monthly there. This month's workshop is going to be about circuitry, so explaining how circuitry works in our life, tribal, individual, and collective circuitry. And the price of the private community is €8 a month. Forever, it's never gonna change, and you have private chats with me weekly and the workshops once a month. And I think that's about it what I wanted to say. If you're
How much?
interested, you let me know.
How
eight
much is
euros
eight? What is that?
eight
And
dollars Let me check how much is now. I think it's about 8.40 or 9.
oh, okay, so it's not that far off.
It's very similar. Euro to dollar rate. Yeah, €1 is 1.7 dollars. So €8, it's gonna be 8.50, $8.50.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I will send you a link to join the community.
Okay.
Because next week I have the workshop.
Oh, okay, great.
All right. All right. I'll message you on Facebook then. Thank you very much for today, and I'll send you the recording as soon as it's ready.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.